this is not meant to be the type of class that I would do as a single class. This is meant to show some possibilities for advancing the practice, starting from the very, very simplest to more advanced practices. And obviously, I won't be sharing a ton of different things. And I typically start with one sequence. I make it go for quite a while and vary it from there. So what I was doing in the past month with another Zoom class that I'm teaching, we did practices on the floor. So once you're on the floor, you don't have to get up and down. And we did that every week for the month. This month, we're progressing to similar practices done in a seated position. And they're very somatic. They're meant to link with the breath. They're meant to start off very gently so that we can reduce excessive held tension and prepare the body for things that are more strenuous without creating more tension in the body when we do it. So lie down on your back, and if you don't want any excessive noise to carry through, just mute your microphone. If you don't want me to see you when you practice, it's always a possibility to either stop the video or block the camera on your screen. And hopefully you can see quite well. I did turn my microphone on. And when you lie down,
I'm going to turn mine off, but go ahead and introduce yourself for the people that are going to watch this video later. Introduce yourself and give them a little background.
I always forget to introduce myself because I consider the practice to be more important. So my name is Sandra Nicht. I am not only a certified yoga therapist, but I have a master's degree in yoga therapy from the Maryland University of Integrative Health. I was part of the very first cohort that graduated in 2015. I've been practicing yoga in various forms for over 30 years. I actually began in high school, kind of stopped for a while as I went through dance and aerobics and all that sort of thing. Came back to yoga through the fitness industry. We had a yoga teacher at the club where I was the aerobics director. And when that teacher left to open her own studio, there weren't that many yoga teachers around in order to hire. So I had memorized her routine and basically practiced that until I got more training. So that was my introduction to teaching yoga, because I kind of knew how to teach from aerobics and fitness realm and just knew that I needed to understand more about yoga. So from there, because I was young and very, very fit, I was attracted to what's called the Ashtanga method, the Patabi Joyce method. And that worked very well for me until I hit the perimenopausal stage, whereupon I was extremely out of balance and got very, very sick. And I'm pretty convinced that if I hadn't managed to change things, I might have actually died from that. So when I came back from surgery, I did manage to keep all my organs. I started searching for other ways of practicing, and I had been practicing Qigong, which is, sort of like Tai Chi, learning how to manage my energy. Couldn't get back to my Ashtanga practice, so I found what's called the shadow yoga practice, which is a very somatic practice. So soma means body in the Greek sense, and it refers to being able to pay attention to your experience as you're moving. So as you take a lying down on your back position, option one, it's difficult for you to lie with the legs straight. Go ahead, bend the knees, because this gives you a chance to tip the pelvis back towards the floor. And you can breathe a few times here. And if your back releases enough to allow you to stretch the legs out, you can stretch out straight. But anytime that the back feels like it's too tight, maybe that's a place you carry tension, feel free to bend the knees and keep them bent, because the very first practice is understanding how to breathe in a way that takes it out of the fight, flight, or freeze, your sympathetic nervous system where you're tense and you're tending not to recognize that. And as we bring the breath more into a calmer way of breathing, it makes you more in the parasympathetic mindset, the rest and digest. So if you wish, you can rest one hand on your lower belly. The other hand can rest on the chest, and you can slide the hands wherever you need so that the arms can completely rest on the mat. And the first practice, you just simply notice which hand moves first. Does your belly hand move, or does the chest hand move first? And if your belly is moving first, that's a good thing. If the chest hand is moving first, bring both hands down to the lower belly and imagine that you're breathing into your lower abdomen. And you want to feel not that you're pushing the belly out with the breath, you're just allowing the belly to move with the breath. As you exhale, you have the option of squeezing a little bit more air out, so you feel almost like you're preparing to do a sit-up. And as the belly firms with the exhale, you can feel that more pressure pushes your back into the floor. And if you tend to have back pain, you can keep a little bit of that tension there the next time you breathe in. And this will strengthen the abdomen and allow you to relax a bit more. And if a few breaths that way allows you to stretch the legs out straight, then you can allow the legs to go straight. Still breathing down into the abdomen. If this is moving well for you, you can slide your hands up to the side rib cage and then focus on breathing a little bit into the belly and then focus on expanding the ribs next. And we'll typically on the first day spend a bit more time than this on it. But the intention with this breath practice is to slowly be able to slow the breath down a bit so that eventually your inhalation is about 4 seconds on the inhale, 4 seconds on the exhale. It can be longer. If it's difficult to breathe at a 4-second pace, you can find the pacing that works for you. And the initial practices, you're working at making the inhalation and the exhalation equal in length and very smooth. So once again, bend the knees, let the feet rest flat on the mat. The knees are upright. Take the arms out to the sides like wings with the palms facing the ceiling. And as you're inhaling and exhaling, focus on keeping the breath steady. You'll take one more breath in with the knees upright. And then as you exhale, just let your knees fall to one side. My knees are falling to the left. If you feel pulled to the right, that's fine. And you'll just allow the legs to relax to the left as far as is comfortable without effort. And you can stay here for a few breaths if you wish, keeping the breath the same pace and just noticing whether the position you're in is pleasant or unpleasant. If it's not pleasant, you probably push too far. And if it feels good, see where your tension is being held here. So it might be in the hips, it might be somewhere in the back. You can imagine that you're sending your breath to whatever is tight. As you exhale, see if you can let that excessive tension go. You'll get one more breath. We can spend more time there in the future. But as you exhale, firm just the belly and use your inhale to draw the knees upright, allow the hips to go flat to the floor. Now, if you remember how many breaths you were on that position, the next time you exhale to the other side, allow yourself to relax wherever the body wishes to go, but don't be attached to doing the same thing on both sides. Let your body feel relaxed here. Keep the breath the same. And see if your body takes the same number of breaths to release tension. Does the body need to come out sooner on this side? Or does the body need to stay a couple of breaths longer in order to relax? Are you comfortable here? Where is your tension held here? Is it in the same place as on the other side? Can you keep the breath the same pace? And let's just say for this first initial intro class that you've done the same number of breaths, you've done enough here. The next time you inhale, allow the knees to come upright, so you're flat on the back, knees upright, and exhale, roll the knees to the other side again. Inhale, bring the knees upright, and exhale the knees over to the second side. So now we have a rocking motion. Inhaling, knees upright, back flat, feet flat. Exhaling, rolling across the feet, rolling to the hip. Allowing one hip to rise up as far as it wishes to go. And allowing the exhalations to take you over. So as you set up this rhythm, resist the temptation to speed up the movement. Keep the breath the same. And if you wish to increase the sensation of twist, as you're inhaling, knees upright, everything comes to center. And as you exhale, turn the head in opposition to where the knees are falling. So when your knees go to the left, your head is looking to the right. When you're upright, everything is center. When the knees fall to the right, the head turns to the left. And we'll just do a few more rounds like this, just noticing the sensation in the body as you're rocking the legs, as you're turning the head, without forcing. If you do feel like you can do a little bit more, you can add a little bit of pressure into the mat on the foot that's the top foot. So you roll to the left, this will be the right foot. And perhaps you push that right hip over a little bit farther, relaxing in the center. And when the knees go to the right, you'll push the left foot into your mat to push the left hip over a little bit farther, relaxing into the center. This should continue to feel really good. And if it doesn't, you're working too hard. Find the place where it's comfortable, where it's really ridiculously easy, and it doesn't feel like you're doing that much. Do one more round to each side. After you finish the second side, pause in the middle with the knees upright. And just notice how you feel after that sequence. Now, normally in a full 1 hour class, we add in a few more practices that are on the floor. But to show you how this particular practice might progress over the course of the class, work your way upright. If it's hard to just sit straight up, just roll to one side and sit up. And then you'll sit upright, leaning back into your hands. And if having the palms flat on the floor is uncomfortable for the wrist, you can lean onto a fist, or if it's still a little bit too much, you can lean onto your elbows. It'll be a little bit more awkward. But the main takeaway is to focus on that breath into the belly and try to make your buttocks heavy on the floor. So that way you're not collapsing back into the hands, which puts pressure on the wrist. You're pushing a little bit into the buttocks because eventually the progression is to do this upright without the hands. So the feet will still be apart. You can have them at whatever distance apart is comfortable, and we'll take that same rocking motion from here. So you'll inhale with the knees upright, and as you exhale, let the knees fall to one side. Inhale, bring the knees upright, and the pressure's even on the buttocks. And you exhale, let the knees fall to the other side. So continue to inhale and exhale, and allow the knees to rock. And at first you don't go far, but you can feel a little bit more twist. If you feel the urge and it feels comfortable, you can turn the legs a little bit more and allow the back hand to slide away from the mat. And as you rock back to center, that back hand comes down. And then when you rock to the other side, the other hand starts to come up. So when I'm rocking my knees to the left, my right hand will come up. The body has a tendency to want to turn, so you can allow that. And you may wish to keep the breath the same, inhaling center, exhaling over, or perhaps you feel led to just change the breath rhythm. We go over this on the back, but perhaps it feels better to exhale the hips down and then inhale, turn. So if your breath naturally switches, go right ahead and allow it to do that. So this rocking motion from side to side, since you have more pressure on the buttocks, if you carry tension there in these muscles, you're going to massage it out. Now, if you do have a hip injury, and this is a bit too much, the modification is to go back to the first practice because it's a little bit less pressure on the hips. So this variation is one that you can stay with for quite some time. I recommend for my classes to try and practice a little bit of what they remember every day. Because I will be recording each class, I will send the class recording to every participant in the class. Please don't share this with others. Have them sign up so that the community college can keep the classes going over time. That's just a little plug for signing up for class. But there are always variations. So turning the body, one variation is to bring the hand all the way around until you're facing that side. And then you turn around, you do the same thing. So that right hand would come to the floor when I've turned my legs to the left. And the nice thing about this particular variation of this practice is that it becomes a little bit more like the yoga asana that's referred to as pigeon pose. So this is kind of a bent knee pigeon. It's a little bit of a twist. And it gives you the option over time that if you're comfortable staying, whichever side you happen to be on, I'll stay on the right side for now so it's easier for you to see what my legs are doing. You'll just simply stay on that side. And there will be more pressure on the hip of the leg in front. Your task is to keep the breath the same and avoid collapsing the head and the neck. So as you're staying here, gradually press into the legs so there's less pressure on the hands. You'll feel the legs are working. You'll feel the abdomen working. If the wrists are taking a little too much pressure, you can make a fist. This creates a straight line from the fist through the wrist, through the elbow to the shoulder. And you're working at trying to draw the chin in towards the throat without bending and kinking up the neck. So that over time, the legs carry your weight, the hands will carry a little bit. The spine feels like it's a bit more in a straight line as opposed to having too much curves. And your breath will feel restricted on one side. So focus on breathing down into the belly and out into the rib cage and just notice what you feel like. Stay one more breath and notice how you feel. And if you happen to be counting your breaths, we'll replace, the other side will do the same number of breaths. So as you feel ready, on either an inhale or an exhale, whichever suits you, you'll start to turn the legs, you'll roll to the other side, and then you'll stay there. So you can be on your palms, you can come to the fist. If this hip needs to be off to the side, this hip might be more or less comfortable. If you can't stay the same number of breaths, simply stay as many breaths as you can. Notice what happens to the breath. One option is simply to keep that breath moving, to try and breathe deeper. Imagine that you're breathing into the discomfort, and as you exhale, you're trying to release the discomfort, and see if that mental shift helps. If it doesn't and the pain is increasing, you can always go back to the rocking practice until things settle down, and perhaps then you're able to stay on that second side if this is the challenging side. So again, you're pressing into the legs, they're working. As you're breathing into your belly and out into the rib cage, notice where tension is being held. You need a little bit to hold the position. You're trying to put the pressure in the legs, a little bit of work in the abdomen to support the spine. You want as little pressure in your hands and wrists as possible. And then you're drawing the chin back a little bit without looking up or down. You'll be looking out away from yourself at an angle, trying to feel when your spine is elongated and carries space, and then the breath remains deep, even, slow, and full. And when you've done the same number of breaths here, on an inhale or an exhale, you'll just simply start rocking again. So one of the practices that is introduced when you're lying down is a little bit of a leg swing. So with this one, when you turn to one side, whichever leg ends up on top, just slide that foot and then slide it back. You roll to the other side and you're tracing a semicircle with the back foot along the floor as far as is comfortable, and then you swing it back. So this is a mobility exercise for the hip that over time progresses towards a possibility of being able to stand up from the floor. Though it might be a bit challenging at first, there are other practices that we can do in order to help strengthen you for that. So do one more leg sweep on each side. If you're not comfortable doing that seated, you do this on the lying down practice. You can roll all the way to your side. You swing the leg along the floor. You roll onto the back. You turn the legs to the other side. Allow that top arm to come with you so you can get the leg swing here. Once you have that leg swing, you have the potential of rocking towards that front leg, used to be the back leg. You put the foot flat on the floor and you lean towards it, and you give yourself a little push with the back hand and the leg that's under you. So just start with a little bit of a tug. You swing the leg through from your windshield wiper, put the foot on the floor, give yourself a little rocking motion and a little push with the leg and the hand that are on the floor, and just see if you can lift both hips off the floor for a little bit. So you swing the leg back, windshield wiper to the other side, swing the back leg forward, put the foot down, see if you can come a little bit higher. Now this one, there is a potential of putting too much pressure in the knee. So the fix for the knee is to make sure that your ankle and foot are pushing into the ground more than the knee is. And there will be practices designed to teach you how to push into the floor with the foot and the ankle instead of the knee. This will make your abdomen work a little bit harder, basically your core strength, because as we're learning to work towards standing, we want to be able to get onto both feet and both hands. So you swing the leg, rock and roll your legs to the other side. The back leg swings forward, plant the foot, the back hand and the leg that's down push, and if it's possible, push into the foot that's on the floor and try to pick up the other foot. So now you're on all fours. Then to get back down, you turn that back leg, it's a tripod stance until you can get the hip down on the side you started with. You swing that top leg back and you windshield wiper over. So this obviously is a more advanced practice. This might not happen the first session you practice with me. It might not even happen by the last class of that first session, but we will see how things progress, because this is a potential practice to help make your downward dogs very comfortable. That if you can get to all fours and swing your way back, your downward dog will be very, very comfortable. But if it's possible to get to this all fours position, to get up, all you have to do is walk your hands back to your feet and then stand up. Wasn't that easier to get up than you normally get up? So then just put all four paws on the ground, bend the knees as much as you can. Start to turn your body towards the same leg that you came up on before, so you can get that back hip down. You swing that top leg back, windshield wiper over to the other side. Swing the back leg forward, the foot's on the floor. Rock and stand on all fours. Walk back to your feet till you feel ready to stand up. And then you come back down. Turn towards the leg that you were initially standing on so you can gently land the hip to the floor. Swing that top leg back and then rock and roll. So if you wish, do one more to each side. And once you're up, then you're down. And it doesn't have to be fancy. You know, those of you that have taken yoga asana classes before, you can probably figure out some variations that look more like traditional yoga. But some people that take my classes don't always have a really good experience with certain asanas. So this is to help you. We will progress to some of those. So stop in the middle and then lay down on your belly. And for purposes of teaching, I usually have to keep my head upright so that the microphone catches my voice. But for the beginning, for everybody in the class, when you're able to lay on your belly, first stretch yourself out to your full length, and then you can bend the elbows. You can either stack one forearm on top of the other, allow your forehead to rest on the top forearm. You can spread the hands a little wider if the head needs to be lower. If your nose lands on the floor, if you put your forehead on the floor, if you bring a small hand towel to class, and I happen to have one here, you can take the towel and fold it up to make a little shelf so that when you put your forehead down, it doesn't smash your nose. So I don't have that problem, but if you do, then you can do that. But we'll start here. And we begin with the breath in this position the same way that we did when we were on the back. Now, as you're breathing, you may notice that there are places in your body that are uncomfortable. For some people, it's the knees. So you can turn your legs, toes can go out and the heels come in, if that's more comfortable for the knees. Some people prefer to have the toes in and the heels out. It just puts the pressure on the side of the kneecap. Some people do have good extension in the hip, so they can rest on the tops of the feet. Now, if it's the feet that cramp, that shouldn't have gotten rid of my towel so quickly. The fix for ankles, if you don't have ballerina feet like me, is to take that little towel and you roll it up into a cylinder, and depending on how stiff your ankles are, you would put this underneath the ankle. So it doesn't go on the toes to pad the toes. The idea is to fill in the space between your ankle and the mat so you can push the ankle into something, and that takes the pressure off the toes. And again, I have ballerina feet. I don't need to do that, so I will dispense with it. So as you're breathing into your belly, if you hold tension in your hips, you may feel like your hips are moving up and down with the breath. So with your next exhale, push the navel away from the mat and imagine a big dog is sitting on your butt and pushing your hips into the mat. And then when you breathe in again, keep that sensation of pushing the hips into the mat. So I cue this as feeling like you're breathing into your lower back. So as you're breathing down, keep that pressure in your hips. Try to balance the right side of your pelvis and the left side of your pelvis. And then when the belly breath is moving well, breathe from your belly into the rib cage. Once your rib cage is moving well, breathe about 1/3 of your inhalation into the belly, the second third into the rib cage, and the last third up to the collarbones. But imagine someone is pulling your head past the end of your mat, and someone is pulling your feet to the opposite end of the mat. We're just getting a little bit of firmness so we can get some length in the body. We're trying to imagine that that breath moves us away from your belly to your ribs up to your chest and helps to create space in your spinal column. Now, to help free the neck from this position, whatever position your head happens to be in, whether it's on your hands or your elbows or on your mat, as you exhale, firm the hips down. And then as you inhale, just create some space between your forehead and the mat or your hands. And if the back of the neck is not that strong, or if it's very challenging, just exhale and lower the forehead back down. So you can lift it several times with the breath. Now this is different from trying to look out in front of you. We're not bending the neck. We're looking down as you inhale and lift the head, push down with the hips so you're not pushing with the arms. It doesn't matter how high up you lift. This will help strengthen the muscles that hold your head in place. And as you are able to lift the head without bending the neck, this will start to strengthen the muscles at the very top of your upper spine, which can correct the kyphosis that often happens if you sit too much. And this was one of the practices I needed to do after a major car accident that left me all bent over. So this lifting and lowering practice, when you're able to hold the head up, hold it up, keep the length. Inhale, exhale, hips into the mat. And when you're ready, the inhale, the head is center. And the exhale, you'll just gently turn to look to one side. Inhale, bring the head to center without lowering it down. And exhale, turn the head to the other side. So we're not trying to force the head. We're just inhaling center, exhaling to turn. Trying to see how free the neck is. It might be a little stiff to one side. Just notice if this slow, mindful turning helps. And if you get tired, then you know what your homework needs to be. And when you do get tired, stop in the middle and you can lower the forehead to your hands. So once you've rested a bit, slide the hands apart a bit so that the middle fingers are touching. Forehead can rest on the mat. You can also lift it up if you wish, if it's not comfortable to have the head down. And we're going to progress to the back of the shoulder. This is another thing that helps with the posture. So you'll inhale and exhale the hips into the floor. Keep a little firmness in your abdomen. And as you inhale, try to lift one elbow off the floor. And then you'll exhale, you lower the elbow down. So the hand stays down, and it's just the elbow that lifts. It doesn't have to lift very far. But as that elbow lifts and lowers, try to focus on the sensation in the shoulder blade. If the head is up and you're able to keep it up as the elbows lift, when the right elbow lifts, turn and look at the right elbow. When the elbow comes down, bring the head center. And when the left elbow lifts, turn the head and look at that left elbow, and then bring the elbow down in the head center. As an alternate, if you're not able to keep the head up, when the elbow lowers, you can lower the forehead down. And then you lift the head and lift the other elbow and turn the head at the same time. And then the head can come down. So do a few more rounds this way. You can make this as hard as you want, as long as you're not straining. You can take a rest break. And if the rest break means that you need to come off your back, a nice easy way to rest is just simply to disconnect the arms, roll to your side, curl the knees to the chest, stay there a few breaths. If you need, you can stretch the legs back and roll to the other side for a bit. Breathe a few breaths here. And then when you feel ready to join back into this practice, you'll come onto your belly again. So we will go over that rolling practice as well in the first few classes. So adding one more piece, we're going to do this by itself and then add it to what you just learned. So head can stay down. Inhale and exhale, firm the hips to the mat and feel that the legs are firm without straining. And as you inhale, try to lift one straight leg off the mat without letting the hip come up. There is a practice that we do that, but that's not this one. And then you'll exhale and lower the leg. Inhale and lift the other leg from the buttock without bending the knee and without rolling the hip up. And exhale, put it down. As you inhale and lift the leg, notice how strong that leg can contract and lift. And when you go to the other side, notice if this leg lifts as high. Is it a challenge? This can tell you if you have an imbalance in strength between the right buttock muscle and the left. We often have one side that's stronger than the other. But most of the time, we don't really realize that, and then we don't understand why we get injured. And we get injured because of the imbalances. It creates habits, and those habits start to pull on the bones and might pull them out of alignment. And that lack of alignment can lead to an injury. So once we know that one side is weaker, in my case, it's my left leg, I can inhale and lift that left leg and hold it there for a few more breaths. So I can strengthen this leg and try and get it to lift higher over time. And then when I've stayed here a few breaths, I can lower the leg. I know my right leg is strong, so I can go back to the lifting and lowering. And once you have this lifting and lowering action, think before you do, whichever leg is lifting, you're going to lift the opposite elbow. So starting with the head down, when your left leg lifts, try and lift the right elbow. Lower the two limbs at the same time. When the right leg lifts, the left elbow lifts, and they come down at the same time. Inhale, lift. One arm and leg pair. Exhale and lower it. Inhale, lift the other arm and leg pair. And exhale and lower it. When you're strong enough, the head can stay up. And you can keep it up for a few rounds. But now we know that one last little piece. When the left leg lifts, right elbow lifts, turn to look at the right elbow. Lower and bring the head center. And then turn to look at the left elbow when you lift the right leg. Just do a couple more rounds of this if you can. Though if you're tired, you can stop and rest and roll to one side. One more round on each side. Then option one, roll to your side. If you need, you can roll onto your back and hug the knees into the chest just to release the back. Imagine that you're inhaling your back into the floor and exhaling your back into the floor. When you're ready, and normally from here I would do a different type of practice, but I want to give you one of the more challenging practices. So roll over to all fours, and if it's possible to sit back on your feet, you can sit up. This is to get the practice in the legs. I'll have to adjust my camera a little bit so you can see it. Now, obviously, if I have a large number of students who have issues with the knees, I won't do this practice. That's why we're going to do this towards the end of a session to see how knees fold. But there are some things that you can do if the knees are tight. You take that little hand towel and roll it up. You can make a thicker cylinder, but the idea is to open up space in the knee so that this goes behind the knee, right in the crease between the calf and the thigh, so that when you sit back, it stretches the quads and creates space in the knee. If you don't have a towel immediately handy, you can put your hands in that crease as well. But we typically are not going to stay here that long because I want to teach you, we go through a whole sequence with the hands. So down dog is a practice that is very, very common in yoga classes, but a lot of people have issues with the wrist. So first, find a spread for the fingers that's not too firm. You just want to feel that they're spread apart so that when your weight is in the feet and the legs, when you bow forward, you can place the hands and practice pushing the fingers into the mat until you feel the muscles in the wrist and the forearm start to engage. So this is definitely a very challenging practice, even for people who consider themselves strong or more advanced. You know, really, there's no such thing as beginning and advanced. We're all beginners, trying to figure out how to get my hands in the screen. So this placing of the palms, the most common issue that people have is that the outer wrist bone has a problem. And if you have the work in the legs and you put the hand down and you start to come forward, a lot of times it's that index finger knuckle that comes off the mat, the fingers start to curl. So without putting weight in the hands, and this can be done standing against a wall or putting your hands on a table as well. If you tend to have pressure in the outer wrist, balance that outer wrist by pressing the base knuckle of your index finger down until that base of the wrist comes off the mat. Press into the base of the thumb and then try to ground the base of the little finger. So this will start to strengthen the muscles in the wrist, the hand itself. You'll get tired in your wrist and forearm muscles. So that positioning of the hands needs to happen before you start bearing weight on the hands. So then the next section from there, as you're stretching out, the pressure is still in the legs. You've pressed into the fingers. You're learning how to press into the feet so this doesn't go into the knees. So as you begin to come forward to all fours, you're pushing your ankles into the mat. You're bringing yourself over top of the hands, pressing the index finger and thumb down. And then as you exhale, you can sit right back to the heels and take the pressure off the hands. So the inhale, you're coming forward, the pressure is in the legs. If you're not sure if you're doing it right, the next time you come forward to the all fours position, try to push into your ankles enough to even pick the knees up off the ground. And then when you sit back, you can allow the shins to press down again. There are ways that you can use a folded blanket to push the shins into the blanket instead of the floor. But I'm one of those teachers that really disagrees with simply padding the knees because it doesn't teach the right joint actions. It doesn't activate the lower belly. So for people that are stronger, they have good core strength. When you come forward, you have the option of flexing the ankle and curling the toes under. And then you're pushing into the toes to keep the pressure off the knees. It's the same thing, but with the toes curl. And then people who are super strong, you pick the knees up off the ground and you rock forward to all fours and you keep the knees off the ground the entire time. That will make your legs hurt quite a bit. But you need to have the strength of the legs in order to get to your downward dog. If the strength of the legs isn't there, when you try to get to down dog, it all goes into the hands and the wrist. So this sequence evolves from this kind of, I call it puppy pose, to all fours. Whether the knees are on the ground or a little off the ground, sink the hips back to your heels. This is kind of a short dog. You're pressing your fingers down. As the heels come down, the knees come up. You feel your lower back round a bit. And what you're looking for as you're working towards down dog is reaching the heels down without pushing forward over the hands as you did in the all fours. So not everybody can get the heels down. Not everybody can get the legs straight. That's fine. If your heels come down, but the legs are pushing you over the hands, you've lost the strength in the lower body. So we work at pulling the knees back, keeping the weight back in the feet. And if you only get to a knees bent, heels up position, it's still a bit strenuous. Keep working the breath. You can then walk the hands back to the feet, as we learned earlier, until all of your pressure is in the feet, and then your rest break is to stand up. This obviously might take a few sessions to build up to, because that's pretty hard, isn't it? But here's how I started teaching down dog to people that had trouble reaching the floor. Take your feet wide and bend the knees until your palms can touch the ground. And it's the same position as you had kneeling. You're practicing keeping the weight in the feet. The knees and the ankles are bent. You're pressing the fingers into the ground. And you want to feel that the ankles can bend without putting weight into the hands. So from there, with that nice long neck that we worked on in previous sessions, just slide your hands out a little bit without shifting the weight forward. So here's the stretch in the back body that you get in down dog, but all of your weight is in your feet. If you can keep the bend in the ankles, you rock forward a little bit and slide the hands forward again. And you just keep working that until you can get the knees to straighten without losing that bend in the ankles. Now, I've been practicing a long time, so I can have a pretty outstretched downward dog without my heels coming off the ground. My arms go by my ears now. When I initially started yoga, my shoulders were very tight from weight training, so I could not get my arms by my ears in downward dog. I had to come forward, I had to take a shorter stance. But this downward dog needs to be balanced eventually, 50% in the feet, 50% in the arms. 50% to the right side, 50% to the left side. And then we start practicing those alternating arm and leg pairs. You'll push into your left foot in your right hand and your right foot in the left hand so you can feel your core activate in kind of an X shape. So we won't go too far with that. Just walk back to your feet, bend the knees gently, turn your weight to the ground and lie down on your back so I can give you some rest at the end of your practice, because that last bit was a doozy. So far, I have not taken too many people that far along yet, but we'll see, because the year is young. So for some classes, I like to give a little short, a brief yoga nidra session. Yoga nidra means yogic sleep. It's meant to be a directed meditation, and you just start on your back. People typically call this shavasana, which means corpse pose. Though there was one teacher that used to say, no, take shavasana, that's for final rest. You take rest only. So I don't know, he had a little bit of a superstition, I guess. You're not taking corpse pose because you're not a corpse. But this resting pose is meant to relax your body. So like you did at the beginning, if it's easy to get the legs straight, arrange your body symmetrically, and you can look up at your feet, make sure your head's right in the center line. Turn your arm bones so that the backs of the hands are on the ground. Relax your body. If you still have a little bit of tension in the back, if you need, go ahead, bend the knees. You can tip the pelvis back, breathe your back into the floor, and perhaps after a few breaths, you're able to stretch the legs out straight so you can completely release. Start breathing, that nice, slow, smooth breath. It's common to lose the rhythm periodically when you're concentrating on something else. But now that you don't need to concentrate on anything but sensation, imagine that you're breathing your breath down into your feet. Let go of any tension that might have crept into your belly or your lower back. If there's any discomfort, you can wiggle the body, go back to releasing everything, and then go back to breathing down to your feet. Once you have that breath moving to your feet, bring your awareness over to your right foot only. If you can, pay attention to the sensation in the right foot without actually moving anything. Just see it in your inner vision. Notice everything you can notice that you can feel in that right foot, in the right leg. And then shift your awareness over to your left foot only. As before, try not to move anything unless you find it difficult to see that left foot. If you're right-handed, sometimes it's harder to pay attention to the left side, so you might need to wiggle your toes, wiggle the leg, get some sensation there, and then allow your awareness to rest there as you bring it still again. And then try to broaden your awareness to include both feet, both legs. And just pay attention to whether one side seems more prominent. You don't have to change anything. Again, if you have a dominant side, that side might be a little more prominent in your inner vision. So you can, if you wish, put a little more of your attention to your non-dominant side and then try to maintain that level of awareness as you bring the other side back into focus. Then bring your attention to your right hand only. Shift your awareness over to your left hand only. And then try to be aware of both hands evenly at the same time. Drop your awareness over to your left foot only. Maintain that awareness and try to broaden it to include the right hand. Bring your awareness over to the right foot only. Maintain that awareness, try to broaden it to include the left hand. And then see if you can broaden your awareness to include both feet and both hands simultaneously. Do this without judgment. There may be some blind spots in your inner vision. That's perfectly fine. As you practice this, you're creating new connections between your body and your brain. And once you've done the best you can, paying attention to both feet, both hands, see if you can broaden your awareness to include the head. And then as you feel ready, see if you can continue to broaden your awareness of the parts in between your feet, your hands, and your head. We're aiming to cultivate the continuous awareness of your entire body. As you practice this, eventually we can move from the awareness of the sensations on the surface to awareness of what's happening inside, so that over time we can learn the effect of how we breathe on our internal awareness, on our sensations. And perhaps eventually we can maintain that awareness in our ordinary activities, like washing the dishes, doing the laundry, making a meal, eating the meal. Try to maintain that full body awareness as much as you can and just start wiggling toes, wiggling fingers, gently turning your head until you feel ready to roll onto one side. You can curl into a little ball for a few breaths. If you wish, you can roll to the opposite side. Notice if it feels good on this side. If one side was more challenging, do both sides feel better now? if you have a preferred side to sit up from, you can choose that side. But every now and then, you might wish to choose the side that's a little harder to come up from, just to train your body for something new. So as you're ready to work yourself more upright, choose the path that seems the easiest. As you work your way upright, notice how your body feels. My entire goal is for you to feel better at the end of practice than when you started. And I do a little check-in at the beginning and end of each class asking, so Linda, if you want to sit up and unmute yourself and tell me how you feel.
Yeah, I feel great. That was wonderful. I feel very balanced.
And this one is a little unusual because I have two different class types that I'm hoping to teach. The longer class that's on Friday, that's the, what is that, Strength and Flex 1, is where we'll spend more time in some of the basic practices. We'll progress a little more slowly. The Strength and Flex 2, it will run a little more quickly, but potentially there's a possibility that we can move a little faster in that class or slower. I tend to adjust my class according to who is attending. So I'm hoping if anybody watching this video, if they have any questions, they can feel free to email me. My simple email address, one of them, is thewellseasonedwoman@gmail.com, because I'm old. As my once said years ago, when I hit my 50th birthday and I call her up and I'm talking to her on the phone, she was about 5. And my brother's asking her in the background, ask her how old she is. I'm 50 years old today. And there was this beat. And she says, you're old. And my brother just lost it in the back. So now I'm even older. I was 63 yesterday. And I used a lot of these practices to help get my yoga practice back, first after menopause and then after a major car accident 6 years ago. Most people would never know that I'd ever had it unless I'm complaining about something, which I try not to do. I try to get myself in good shape after that. So I hope that answers any questions people might have about my class. Don't panic if that last sequence seems a bit hard. We won't be doing that the first day. We might not even make that by the last day of the course. We'll start with the easy. We'll work our way up. I try to give you a few weeks to master the first set of activities, and then we progress from there. And I don't really set more than a very, very basic lesson plan. I'm very intuitive. And people will always have the option of unmuting themselves and asking a question. You always have the option of continuing to practice with the video for most likely a week. I'll give you a week and then I'll delete it, so you have to learn something new. And thank you for practicing with me today.
It was wonderful.
Good, great. And I'm from Baltimore. Most people like to end their classes with namaste, which is actually it's a greeting. It's how you say hello on the phone in Nepal. But I like to end with namaste hun, because I'm from Baltimore.